Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our next video in our series 100 Men and Women from the Bible. When I saw it was my turn coming up soon and I had a look, I saw the name Saul and I had a raising of hope that, this could be Saul in the New Testament that turns to Paul because he gets transformed by an encounter with Jesus and then he spreads the gospel around the known world. But no, it wasn't. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit slightly disappointed. But then I had to chastise myself and remind myself that actually God's placed these characters that fell short, that made mistakes, that were a failure. God's allowed them to be included in the Bible, in his word. And it reminded me of God's graciousness, God's love and his kindness. Even though when we make mistakes, he's still very gracious to us. And it also reminded me of actually, I've got a past and I've got failures and I still make mistakes. And it reminded me that, God can still turn the bad situations in our past and he can turn them to good. And that I can relate to people that have gone through a similar situation, and you can relate to people that have been through a similar life experiences, and God can use our failures to encourage them and to equip them, or to encourage them not to make the same mistakes. So we are looking at Saul from the Old Testament, and a long time ago when the people of Israel had gone into the land, they saw the nations around them had these strong leaders, these kings who would lead them into battle, who would lead them. And the people of Israel then said to God, we want an earthly king. God knew what was best. And he said, no, I want you to follow me, for me to be your king, for me to lead you into battle. But they rejected that idea. So God graciously gave in to their request. He said, it won't go well, but I will give you what you like. So God gave them this man, Saul. And it all looked good. It all looked promising. He was tall, he was good looking, he was strong in battle. It looked very promising. God had chosen him, God had called him, he'd been filled by God's Spirit. And it was a new era, a new beginning, a new anointing. It did look promising at the start. And even though it may have looked good at the start, in this passage and through the life of Saul and David, we see a really great verse in the Bible. And it's this: God doesn't look at the outward appearance. He looks at the heart. And in fact, that's where Saul's problem was. It was in his heart. And Saul had many problems. He was angry, he was bitter, he had jealousy, he had periods of depression. He was angry. And we haven't got time to look at all of Saul's life because there's hundreds of sermons in there, because he did serve for 42 years as king. But he had an overall problem in his heart, and it was this: he was disobedient. He didn't follow clear instructions. He didn't have a spirit that was teachable. He always wanted to do it his own way. Maybe because he was tall and he was strong and he was a good leader and he could go into battle. Maybe his pride fed the fact that he thought, I can do this in my own strength and not in God's. So we see in chapter 9 of 1 Samuel, we see Saul doesn't wait for Samuel to inquire of God and to do the sacrifice, which is wrong. He wouldn't obey. And then in chapter 15, he's given clear instructions and he doesn't follow them. Saul disobeys God, and it says that God's Spirit left him. And then he went on to become angry and bitter and just rebellious, and he was completely ignoring God's clear instructions. He consults witches. He tries to kill David. He goes against clear instructions of what not to do in the Bible. And throughout God's word, there's a repeated theme that we see, that there's blessings for obedience, for obeying. And after Saul had disobeyed in chapter 15, Samuel says this: does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in simply obeying the voice of the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice. Saul didn't have a teachable spirit. I'm not sure about you, but I know that in my life and in my working life especially, you come across people, different characters, and they don't like it when they get things wrong. They don't take to constructive criticism. They don't take to being corrected. They become very defensive and argumentative. They're just that type of rebellious person who doesn't like corrected, even though they've been clearly made a mistake. And we come across those type of people in life, and that seems what Saul was like a little bit, doesn't it? But there's also the opposite to that type of person, and it might not necessarily be in a work situation, but definitely in a church situation. You come across people who walk through life and they seem to journey through life under God's consistent blessing, even when the storms of life come, that they still walk in an aurora of peace and love and joy. And what's the key to that success? I think the key to that success is obeying God. It's obeying his word, to love him completely with all of your heart, to serve him with all of your life, and to put him first, to obey what he says. If he says to stop swearing, then we need to stop swearing. And when we put God first and obey him, then any of us can walk in God's constant blessing. And I'd like to leave you with that thought this morning. And I pray that you have a great day. But there's this thought: there is blessings for obedience. Obey God. Choose to serve him. Choose to obey him. Choose to do what he asks, to be transformed into the image of Christ. And then we'll walk in God's blessings. Not that we want to serve God just because we want blessings. We serve God because he loves us and he's got the best intentions for our future and for our present. So have a great day, everybody. God bless. Look forward to seeing you all on Sunday morning. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.